morning. And maybe we'll arrest this guy when we arrange this schedule. I don't know how we manage. But, I think this story, amazing story. And if you ask me what I would do, so I would bring to this tent all the chief of police in the world and hear that story to realize why we had this wrong policy through the years. And I'll tell you my story. It's, I started as a police officer as a prosecutor. I'm a lawyer, and we started as, and this is the first time I met actually cannabis, but from the other side. And I did pretty good, I think, work, because you can't become a chief of police if you're not doing a very, very good job. But what I realized through the years, that's something wrong. You can't treat cannabis as the other drugs, and that there is a big, big difference. And I think the key difference, we just had a great example, Riley. I think I don't know about your uncle, the sheriff uncle, but I believe that when you see such stories, you can't stay with the same, I'd say, education that you got on the police forces around the world, and say, okay, I know it's wrong, but we have to continue forcing the law. So something wrong with the law, and you have to think about it. And I think the change around the world now these days, I think the patients are the one that led that change around the world. And when I look at Israel as an example, so I started, I was in the army for 4 years. You have to serve in the army. I was in the paratroop as an officer. And then I joined the police force as a prosecutor. And after that, I was in the investigation units, command units. One of them was the international unit that we made many, many mutual cases with other agencies around the world. Most of them led by the US, the DEA, and the FBI. And you see that actually the US are the one that led it around the world. The policy around the world started from America, from the 40s, and it didn't change so much through the years. Even in Israel now, these days, and I'm really proud to be part of the change that we had in Israel. The changes, it's not enough. CBD is still illegal, it's still considered drug in Israel. On the other hand, medical cannabis is legal, and medical cannabis, this is something that I couldn't, as a police officer, look at the patients in the eyes and consider it a dangerous drug. And you say, and consider them criminals. This actually the law. And when you see these examples, you say, you ask yourself, is that what you meant to do? This is forcing the law. This something wrong. So what I did is, when I get with the jobs I used to be the head of the investigations, and then I became the chief of police, the commissioner of Israel. The Israeli police is a national police, it's federal. And so practically I changed the policy by telling my police officers to handle other drugs and leave cannabis users just don't touch them. But I couldn't change the law. And so what I did, I said it publicly. It was a big headlines in that time, when you're the police chief and you're with uniforms and you go publicly and you say something wrong with this law, you should change it. And so what I did with the Ministry of Health together, we made the process that almost, I think more than 10 years ago, it became legal, medical cannabis in Israel. And when I left 4 years ago and I moved to the business world, if you tell me when I was in uniform that I'm going to stand here as the chairman of a cannabis company, I would tell you that you're joking. There's no way I'm going to do it. Although I thought that we should change the law. But I think that when you sit with patients, and Riley, I think it's, this is something that you can't hear these stories and say, all right, let's see what's going to happen. You have to be part of the change. You have to share the vision with others, especially legislators around the world, that they should change the policies, they should change the law, and we can see the changes. It's too slow. It's too slow, and in some countries it's still, even in this country, if you think about it. So I heard that maybe in half a year they're going to change it, but you can't. There's something that, I don't know, maybe what I said, like stories like Riley should be published around the world, and maybe they can make them not just declare, but to do, because in declarations, I just came from the States, everybody said we should change, we should make a change, federally we have to change, but nothing happens. Another committee here in the Senate, they should do the change, and it's so easy in the minute you realize that you are doing good things for the patients and for others. The company that I'm leading now is, we have all the chain, and we are global. We have it in Israel, we have it in Portugal, here in Uganda. We have a greenhouse and a factory near it, and we just bought a company that has many products, cannabis products that they use on patients for the last decade, 10 years, a lot of data. And when you think, and I went to sit with some of the patients there, and when you sit there, so I try to convince members of our Congress and members in Israel, the Knesset, I try to convince them to come with me to Hadassah Hospital, sit with the patients, and hear their stories. And I believe it will do something to them when it comes to conservative point of view and conservative issues, when it comes to medical cannabis. I had so many stories which I'm sure you wouldn't like to hear about what happened with the cannabis users around the world and in Israel. And I tried to think what would happen if the changes already happened 20 years ago, or let's say 30 years ago. I think that reality was different, and maybe more healthy human in Earth. And this is something that if I can help, and from my experience, I would love to do it. So if you have any questions, or you want the stories, I'm not sure you want the stories.
Give us the stories.
Well, I have to choose which, but look, there is actually it was international case with led by an American task force, the FBI, and Israeli were involved. That's why, of course, it was mutual with the Israeli police. And what they did, we thought at the beginning that they just deal with money laundering, and we started with that. And it comes to that they actually moved cannabis from Egypt through Sinai to Israel, and from Israel to Europe. Israel was just, they had to cross the country. Nobody in Israel really enjoyed the products, the Egyptian products. But the thing is that when we discovered that it's marijuana in that time, I already have been in a very high position, and I already had my views about marijuana in general. But we discovered that it didn't go for users, around the world. It went to specific, actually medical clients, and then you had this. I didn't feel that we. Let's say, of course, it's great. They did. It was against the law. And we had to see what we're going to do with it. But on the other hand, you see what it does at the end of the chain. And you ask yourself, what really we have to do in this case? If you stop it, you just stop the supply to the patients. So we had a big argument. But there was no way that I can convince the people from the task force, the head of the task force, that they're going to change. And of course, they arrest everybody at the end. But you still, when you, at the end of such a case, you remain with many question marks about, what you're doing as a police force in the world and in Israel in general. And we had so many cases but this case was really, I personally took it very hard, because we arrested people that actually tried to help patients like Riley and others. Okay, so if you have any questions, so thank you very much for.
All right.